Grover, also known as a goal achievement strategist. Everything in my platform is Rise Above with Patricia Jo Grover. We have the Rise Above show, the Rise Above summits, the Rise Above anthology book series, and so excited now, the Rise Above Project, which is a nonprofit under the umbrella of the Institute for the Advancement of Humanity, which is a 501c3 organization. I also have my Bliss Retreat for women, where women can learn to believe in yourself, love yourself, identify what's holding you back, set free what no longer serves you, and set course on achieving your dreams and goals. The next event is Friday, October 29th and Saturday the 30th from 10 to 2. With the Rise Above Summit that we're all here to watch, we have our level 1 sponsor, Roger Burnley, level 2 sponsors, Albert Quarry, Roger Burnley, Dr. Dolores Fazzino, Sheila Farr, and our level 3 sponsors, Shelley Deckant, Dr. Wendy Labatt, Dr. Liz Eisenring, Dan Capellan, Annie Gibbons, Christiana Totor, and Jessica Koch. And our total sponsor. Let's take a minute to hear from them. Welcome to the Rise Above Summit in the spiritual dimension of life. You may recognize our speaker today because she was on one of our recent shows for the Rise Above show with Patricia Jo Grover, Sheila Farr. And let me tell you a little bit about Sheila. Her talk today is The Cage Fight, Overcoming the Battle of Your Mind. And I love that title. I love it. I love it. Sheila is the CEO of Gulf Coast Training Center Education Services, LLC, where she helps struggling entrepreneurs and small businesses overcome obstacles and become success stories. Sheila herself is a 9-time international best-selling author, educator, and business strategist. In 2020, she founded Biloxi Reads, an initiative designed to get books into the hands of underserved populations along the Mississippi Gulf Coast. When she's not serving others in businesses, she's serving her community with Biloxi Reads, that program, providing job training as a workforce readiness director for the Gulf Coast Human Resource Association, and writing her inspirational blog, Thankful and Blessed 365. Oh my goodness, Sheila, that title, Cage Fight, Overcoming the Battle of Your Mind. I love it. So take it over.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I know that's a little bit different for a spiritual realm, but we're going to go with it. And I think everybody's going to be able to gain something from it today. When I was on your show talking with you, we talked a little bit about our mindset and how that can positively or negatively impact our life. So we're just going to continue on with this. And the way that this came about, Cage Fight, Overcoming the Battle in Your Mind, is honestly, I just kind of reached out to the folks that subscribe to our blog and my friends and Facebook family. And I've just said, so tell me, as spiritual being, as faith-based beings, what are the things that you struggle with most? And the thing that came back just time after time was the battle in my mind and the things that I say to myself and my mindset, my perspective. So people are really struggling these days with maintaining a positive attitude, and feeling good, so, and I've been there too. So whenever I started thinking about what can I bring to the conference this time, because I love this conference so much and I love speaking to this audience. So what can I bring that could really be helpful, and what could I relate it to that would really make an impact for them? And honestly, I thought about my struggles, and honestly, the things that I have gone through in my past, it really truly felt like a cage fight, because if you've never been to or heard about a cage fight, what it is, it's kind of a form of mixed martial arts. And I don't really like this stuff, but I know about this stuff and I've seen it, because it's like one of those things that kind of just draws you in. You're like, oh my gosh, that is so brutal and so raw and so hard. Why would anybody ever want to do anything like that? So a cage fight really is, like it says here, it's a form of mixed martial arts, which is a sport that involves a whole lot of different fighting. So you've got boxing, you've got kickboxing, you've got just wrestling, you've got all kinds of things where people are fighting each other, and they're surrounded, as the picture shows here, by bars or a cage. Actually, it literally is a cage. And I think that a lot of times our mind feels like that. It feels kind of jagged and barbed. And we feel like the things that we struggle with sometimes are really, literally, we're throwing ourselves from side to side in our mind. Sometimes that can mimic, the results can resonate in your body as well. So we do that to ourselves. So how do we undo that to ourselves? What I would love to start with, and this is a little bit different about me. So normally when you come to a conference and the presenter puts up the slide about a little about me, you get their bio and their resume, and they tell you what they've done. But I want to tell you a little bit about me as it relates to a negative mindset. So who I was an overthinker. I was insecure. I was a yes, I can girl, which is the person who never says no and always overwhelms themselves because they take on more than they really have the capacity to perform. I was a people pleaser. I felt sad inside, and I was very lonely. And I always felt like I absolutely just was not good enough. So I was a not good enougher. Those were things that always kind of plagued me until I kind of learned to shift my perspective, to shift my mindset, and especially as a person of faith. And we'll talk about this a little bit later. I really had to look at my faith. If I'm professing to be a person of faith, but I'm living a life of heaviness and darkness, which I love these slides because I think that's, that really shows you the depth of that. Am I really where I need to be from a spiritual perspective? So after a ton of self-work, prayer, and encouragement, who I am now, instead of that overthinker, I'm a joy seeker. Instead of being insecure, I'm full of adventure. Instead of being the yes, I can girl, I'm the person who says, if it fits in my plan and it's fun, I'll do it. Instead of being a people pleaser, I'm always looking to be what God's plan is for me. It's His will, is what He called me to do. Instead of being sad inside, I am happy like a rocket. And I know that might not make sense to you guys, but whenever I wake up in the morning, I'm one of those people who pounces out of bed. And the people, my family and friends, they're always like, you are like a rocket. So I am happy like a rocket, I'll say. Instead of loneliness, now I experience an attitude of thankfulness and blessedness in my life. And instead of feeling not good enough, I have so many blessings in my life, and the way that I view my life now is so different. I feel like He only did it for me, even though I know that's not true. He does it for all of us if we choose to see it. So how did I get there? How did I get to become the apple of God's eye, the joy seeker, the adventure lover, the person who's able to put up those boundaries and expectations that tell people, I'll do it if it's fun. I won't do it because you want me to do it. And I'm definitely not going to be a dumping ground for you. How did I get there? That's not where I was. So there was a journey that I made from point A to point B. And if you'll look at this graphic, that's really literally what my what my journey looked like. There's no straight line in life, even though when we plan our lives as kids in high school or even as young children, we plan our lives just linear. We just think everything is going to go smoothly from point A to point B. We never plan for the peaks and the valleys. We definitely never plan for the squiggles and the go back and do-overs. So, it took some time, and it took some learning, and it took some patience and grace. What you see from point A to point B is a whole lot of what I call monkey mind. That is where you have so many thoughts that are just racing. It goes from point A to point B to here to there, and I think a lot of times whenever we get anxious and nervous and insecure, it's because we're suffering from monkey mind. We're listening to all the negative things that just pop into our heads, but those things often aren't true. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too, and how to overcome monkey mind. But also, another way that I got there is I chose faith over fear. And that's one of the big things. Even changing your mind to look at the unknown as an adventure instead of something to be afraid of can be a hard thing to do or to have happen. But you can do it. And we're going to talk about that. So let's dig in. So this is what the battle looks like in your mind a lot of times, or at least the way I picture it in my head. So you've got the you and the yellow, the you and the red, and you're really literally just boxing yourself. You're telling yourself all this kind of stuff that builds up an internal struggle for you. You play mind games with yourself. And I put here that you have a heart condition, and you do. And we'll talk about what a heart condition means and how it can impact your mind in a bit. But you don't take care of yourself. And then there are some fighting words that happen whenever you're in a battle like this. And if you'll ever just kind of stop for a second and think back to a struggle that you had in your mind, I honestly bet that you'll see kind of all of these things happening. There was like it felt like a literal fight going on. And that's why I love cage fight for this talk, because it's like it's all contained right here. So if this is your barbed cage right up here, there's so much damage that we do to ourselves right here, but we also have the power to undo that and to open those doors and to get out of that cage and to grow ourselves and grow other people. So let's talk a little bit about overcoming that internal struggle. I think one of the first steps that we have to do in order to do that is really to face the death of what you think your life should look like. I know a lot of times this is where people kind of really have a struggle or a problem with their mindset, is because they're like, I never thought life would be like this. Life wasn't supposed to be this way. I wasn't, supposed to be 40 pounds overweight. I was supposed to be rich. I wasn't supposed to do this. I was supposed to be this. But I think when we find ourselves having those struggles with our brain and those feelings of insecurity and not enoughness, and allowing people to cross boundaries and use us in ways that are uncomfortable, that are, not positive ways, of course, if you're getting used. But I think it's because we think that our life should be different, or because we want people to see us differently than we really are. So the first thing you have to do is really, like I say here, just face the death of what you think your life should be like. And this can be a little bit challenging and daunting, because you just kind of have to cast off your thoughts. You just have to cast off that care. And it takes some time and it takes some work, but you really can do it. And it is so freeing whenever you get to that point where you're like, you know what? Things haven't gone the way I did plan. But now let's look at where we are. So number 2 there is embrace what you have. So let's look at where we are, because, it might be a mess. We might have pieces of a life that we really want, but you can put it together. And I say this a lot of times with businesses, but you can put those pieces together and make a beautiful mosaic for the future. So if things haven't gone the way that you wanted them to in the past, it's not too late to turn it around. And that's the beauty of it. And then when you're wrestling with those thoughts and feelings, you're also wrestling with your faith. So you have to really be aware of who wins that struggle. Because a lot of times we just give up and give in to the negative, to the defeat, when we really should kind of stand strong in our faith and trust that the Lord's going to bring us through, trust that the universe will bring good things to us when we put things out into it. And you really just have to guard your heart. You've heard that before, but it's really true, because what happens in your heart happens in your mind too. So you want to work to develop emotional and spiritual wellness so that you can overcome that internal struggle. And we're going to talk about ways to do that. One of my favorite ways, though, to overcome the internal struggle is to celebrate the little things. So one thing that really changed things for me, this is like my first little baby step, is I started looking at my days differently. Instead of hopping out of bed and falling into a routine, which Patty knows this, I've talked to her a million times about this. I am a person of habit. I'm very structured. I'm meticulously scheduled. I run everything by my day planner. If it's not in there, it doesn't happen. But what that does sometimes is it gives you tunnel vision. And while it's a good thing, it gives you laser focus, it also sometimes prevents you from seeing what's going on outside in your world. So kind of stripping that away a little bit and taking time to see the things that happen in a day, to listen to the birds chirping outside your window, to look up at the sun and say, oh my gosh, the sun is like the best thing ever, to celebrate all the little things, like the way that your Rice Krispies talk to you in the morning. Don't just take those things for granted. Slow down a little bit and make time to celebrate those little things in life. Let's talk about mind games for a little bit, because we do play such horrible mind games with ourselves. Especially if you're an overthinker or a people pleaser, you want to be viewed as the good person, as the nice person. But you know what? Even the good and nice people have bad days. You can't be on 100% of the time, and that's okay. That is so okay. We beat ourselves up and we tell ourselves that we want people to see us in a particular way, when what we really should be doing is living the way that the Lord has commanded us to live, and using our gifts and our talents in a way that we've been called to do. So disappointment is exhausting and frustrating, but the really cool thing about disappointment is that it holds the potential for so much good. Because whenever you've exhausted all the other alternatives, then you can start to look up, and then you rebound. Think of an arrow. When you start to shoot an arrow, you have to pull it backward before it repels, or before it goes forward. So a lot of times when you're down in the dumps and you don't have any place to go, that's the neatest place to be, because then you can look up and say, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready. So trust that the future holds the key to leading you what God really has in store for you, and where you really should be, as opposed to where as a high school student you thought you needed to be. Untrue and unfounded thoughts confuse our actions. So when our thinking isn't clear, our actions sometimes aren't clear too. When you see people that do things that are kind of, oftentimes we'll say, out of character for them, it's because, maybe they're going through some struggles in their mind. Maybe their mind's just causing some tricks or blips or whatever. Maybe they're just going through a rough patch. Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And that is absolutely true. It speaks to the importance of our mindset. So the moment that you can start to control your mind a little bit better and move it from a kind of a stagnant or steady or fixed mindset into a growth mindset, one where you're a little bit more open, a little bit more positive, then you can start to control some of those mind games that you tell yourself. And to end the cage fight, you have to work toward mental wellness. And that's just the awareness of your ability to cope with stressors and the day-to-day of things that happen in the day-to-day life, while at the same time being able to do all of the things that life calls us to do. And this is where we struggle so much, but it doesn't have to be a struggle. The first thing that we can do is kind of take a look at our heart condition. So you heard me say a bit ago that what happens in your heart often drives what happens in your head. So if the voices in your head and the mind games you play might be caused by your heart condition. And the way that you can check that out is look at the words that you use to talk to yourself and to others. I would challenge you just to do a heart checkup for maybe a certain period of time, maybe 3 days, maybe 5 days, maybe a week. Just kind of anytime you say something very positive to somebody, or anytime you say something pretty ugly, or maybe even if you think it, because that way you're going to be able to track, how many positive interactions you're having, how many negative interactions you're having. And, one time I heard somebody say, when we get shaken, that's when things start to spill out. So if you think of a cup that's full of water, if you shake that cup, water spills out, right? When you put it under stress, the stress of shaking, then things start to spill out. So think of yourself as a cup. And whenever something goes wrong for you, what's your reaction to that? Do you say, oh, well, we'll give it another try. It didn't work out the way we thought. Or does profanity shoot out? Or do you start to belittle other people? Pay attention to what comes out of you, because that's what's in your heart. And the way that you can reduce some of that fear and anxiety, frustration, and even anger, is just to do a faith checkup. Are you where the Lord really wants you to be? Are you really trusting God? If you're a person of faith and you say that you walk by faith, not sight, are you really trusting the Lord? Are you really doing what He's calling you to do every day? And think about where you find solace in your days. Where do you go for comfort and encouragement? Maybe you don't. Maybe you haven't done that in a while. Maybe that's why you're having those mental struggles. And maybe that's why you have those feelings. Remember when I introduced myself at the beginning? I told you that I had a heart of sadness and loneliness, a heaviness. It was because my spiritual walk was a little bit crooked. It wasn't where it needed to be. And as a result of that, it manifested itself in my life as anxiety, sadness, loneliness, all of those heavy and hard things that cause that cage fight. Another thing that can really improve your ability to have a good mindset, what I like to say, a great way to help in that battle royale that happens in your mind, is really to take care of yourself. We fail to do this, and Patty and I have talked about this too. Oftentimes people think about self-care as being selfish, but it's really not, because you guys have heard me say it before. You can't sow into others, or you can't pour from an empty cup. So being sure that your cup is filled is the best way to be able to grow other people or to maintain a positive mindset. So here, if you'll look at the graphic, it says self-care can be taking care of your mind and your thoughts, taking care of your physical health and body, taking care of your spiritual health, increasing your own well-being through self-care behaviors, and taking care of your emotions. All of those things can help in that battle in your mind. Now, you want to talk about benefits of a positive mindset. Look at this list. Isn't this great? Reduce risks or symptoms of depression, lower levels of distress and anxiety, better psychological and physical well-being, reduce risk of cardiovascular disease, better coping skills, greater resilience and resourcefulness, better communication and relationship. Oh my goodness, more happiness, more fulfillment, more meaning in your life, a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of connectedness to your fellow humans, and spiritually you're greater connected. So those are all the benefits of a positive mindset. And I bet if we really thought about it, we could probably triple or quadruple that list right there. So the way to be a winner is to get into the ring. You can do this for yourself. So you really have to look at your environmental wellness. And that means just look at your surroundings. Look at your home. Sometimes that can impact the way we feel too. If you've got a lot of clutter around, if you're not organized or can't find things, if you have, just stacks and piles of things. I'm that way with books. Sometimes I just have to go in my office and clear my books out because I am a bookworm. And I feel like I need to have them covering every little inch of my world. So, really clean up your house or your surroundings. It doesn't have to be a major undertaking. It can be something as small as maybe setting up a nice chair in the corner of a room with a book or a lamp or something that's going to take you to that place of joy, that's going to allow you to have a few moments of self-care. It could be straightening up your desk so it's a little bit better organized for you to do your work. Start small, but start. These are the ways that you can do it. Clear out your social media influences. If you're looking on social media and every time you see a post or advertisement or something from a particular person or business, and it just gets your back up, if it just makes you lean in or grit your teeth, you see what I'm doing? I'm doing it here. If it elicits that response in you, get rid of it. You don't need that. You don't need that in your life. Pray for peace and direction. That's a really great way for you to battle those struggles with your mind. Really focus on praying and seeking God's will. Another thing I would say is really good for it, and a way to get in the ring and really fight that battle, is to say goodbye to toxicity. It could be people, it could be habits, it could be speech. You might have negative speech that you tell yourself, all the I can't do this because, Patty and I talked about this before a lot of times. You guys are probably going to write to her and say, don't have Sheila on one more time to say, get rid of the negative influences, because it's true. You have to get those things out of your life. Nobody needs that. That's how I was able to go from a position of people pleasing to a position of, hey, I'll take this project on if it feels good, if it fits in my schedule, and if it's fun. Because if it's not, I don't need the drama. I don't need the stress. So if you take those things out of your life, say goodbye to them, you won't miss them. I promise you. Give that one a try. It'll free you up also to rebuild and renew. You can't start over until you get rid of all the old gunk. It's just like cleaning anything, cleaning a car, cleaning your kitchen. You got to break it down and get all the grime and dust off of it before you can put the polish on and make it start being shiny, right? So there's a process to it. That's what the whole situation about your mindset is about. There's a process to it. Don't think that everything's going to be done today. Don't think that your line in life is going to be a straight line from point A to point B. Be okay and get comfortable with the loop-de-loops. That's where the fun is in life. And if it's not fun, we probably need to talk so I can help you find it, because I'm excellent at doing that for people. And then I want to talk about fighting words. So sometimes fighting words are negative words. And I've got Yosemite Sam in here as my ad for this because, I can just remember my childhood. And even now, I still watch Bugs Bunny. It's one of my favorites. But him saying them is fighting words. So, there can be bad words that you're using that you need to stop using. But also, there can be words in your vocabulary or affirmation that are your fighting words against that negative and bitter mindset. So these are actually good fighting words. These are what you're using to combat those negative things. So you want to use words of affirmation and encouragement every day. You're fighting a real enemy when you're fighting that battle of the mind. So you want to be sure that you're taking time every day to, maybe it does take looking in the mirror and say, man, you're awesome. You're going to have a great day today. You might need to do that. You might like posting Post-it notes. You might be the type of person who likes word art. So find some encouraging words that you can put around your home, and then it becomes part of your environment. Remember, we talked about cleaning up your environment. So maybe you take down a picture of your high school sweetheart from, 1975, and you replace it with a plaque that says thankful and grateful. So that's the way that you kind of let go of the old and stop saying, oh man, that was the love of my life, to I am thankful and grateful that I have this beautiful home and my beautiful family and my health. So there are ways that you can use words to kind of be positive impacts against that negative mindset. Two of my favorite come from Psalm Bible verses. The first one says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know that full well. That just reminds us that we are all made exactly the way that we're supposed to be. We don't have to be anything other than who we are. It takes away all the pressure. One of my other favorite verses is, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Because what that does is it reminds me two things. Number one, I'm not in control, and I don't have to be. And now I don't want to be because it's so much more fun being a person of faith and letting the Lord lead me and guide me through my life. I would much rather have that. I would much rather have that than be a dumb sheep and think that I have control over anything that happens in life. The second part of that, though, is pivotal. I shall not want. So if you think about that for a minute, a lot of our cage fight comes from our feelings of lack. They come from our feelings of not enough. So if you are living your life in a manner that you believe the Lord is your shepherd and you are going to live in abundance, you're going to have everything you need, what's the purpose of the cage fight? You really don't need it. It takes all that pressure away. if you're a person of faith, and if you're not, I would encourage you really kind of explore these concepts, because whenever you give up the fight of having to be perfect, or wanting to be perfect, or wanting to make an appearance for somebody else, it's such a freeing and a peaceful place in your mind. I can't even explain it to you. It's so wonderful. But these are two verses that are really pivotal fighting words that I would encourage you to use. And I also want to remind you that you do have the power to win that struggle of your mind. You just need to practice a little bit of mindfulness. Notice how you speak to yourself and the words that you use. Listen to your body, because a lot of times we'll push ourselves beyond the point that we should. We'll push ourselves to points of exhaustion. And those things can cause our mind to become tired too, and confused. So we don't think clearly a lot of times when we push ourselves too hard. Here's a biggie. Know your triggers and make a plan to deal with it before it happens. So we talked about coping with things and the ability to cope with struggles or things that are unexpected, negative things, things that bring us grief, loss, death, things that just really weigh us down. Maybe we talked too about the social media and people that you see, or advertisements that you see, or things in the media that you might see that bring about a negative feeling all throughout your body. Know what those are. And then I would challenge you and encourage you to practice responding differently to them. One way of responding differently is just to turn them off, just eliminating it. That's a good way. But maybe it's a person that you can't turn off. Maybe it's somebody in your family that you had a bad, fight with or disagreement with. And now you avoid them. So how do you work through that? Well, you start by just kind of rewiring your brain, your thought process, your behavior. And instead of saying, there's that jerk I never wanted to see again, go back to your fighting words. Remember that verse that says we're wonderfully made? Try viewing that person as God views that person. And then I think you'll find a little bit of difference in the way that you react and behave to that person. You want to rewire that problematic behavior and thoughts, and that's just ways to do it. You have to know what your triggers are, and then maybe you even have to write out a response and say it to yourself. So you're telling your brain, instead of doing this, I will do this. And then whenever that opportunity presents itself, instead of responding negatively, maybe you take a step back and breathe for a minute, and then try coming at it from a different angle. Takes a little bit of work, but you saw my squiggly line from A to B. And if I can get from A to B with all of that drama, you can get there too. So I definitely know you can do it. Surround yourself with positive people and positive media, and then meditate and read inspiring materials. Those are ways for you to win this fight. Because the truth is, you are a treasure. You are wonderfully made. You have a unique set of talents, gifts, and skills that you are meant to use. It's just like fingerprints. They're all different. Our gifts, our talents, and our skills are all different too. Somebody needs you, and somebody's waiting for you. So if you're in a struggle with yourself and you just can't break through, I would encourage you to reach out and just ask for help. We're going to share some ways. So we have shared some ways, but we have a free gift for everybody who's watching today, a journal that you can just message me for. Go to our website, download it, or I'll send you a already bound one if you prefer to have that. Some people just like papers and want to put them in their own notebook, and some people like to have it already done. So we did it both ways. So just let me know you need some help. Let me know you want to talk. Let me know you have stinking thinking and you're having a cage fight and you need some help, and I will be right there to help you, because you're special and the world does need your brilliance. And I want to thank you for being with us today. Again, my name is Sheila Farr. I'm from Gulf Coast Training here in the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast, right in Biloxi. So thank you, Patty, for having me. Thank you to everybody who's watching the Rise Above Summit. And I just appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Oh, Sheila, we're always so blessed to have you. Phenomenal job. And for everyone, her information is here below, and she'll look forward to hearing from you. Welcome to the Rise Above Summit, October of 2021. I am here in the spiritual dimension of life with Roger Burnley, and let me tell you just a little bit about Roger. He began his professional career in the business environment, which turned out to be accounting. He followed the path those in his family had recommended that he and kind of tried to guide him into. Then he discovered music, and that led him into being a coach. And after 30 years of coaching, he's discovered his love for and his study of spirituality allowed him to make a career out of basically combining coaching with spirituality. So welcome to the Rise Above Summit, Roger, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I am so happy to be here. And just hearing you read that part of my bio will sort of explain what I want to talk about today, because it was confusing. My entire life was confusing, and spirituality was a part of that. And what I mean by that, I think that we each will have different definitions of what we think spirituality is. In today's world, it's talked about a little bit differently than it was when I was coming up, because I'm 70 years old now. So back then, it was different. We had religion. And so when we get settled into religion, we have differences, because we can see that our religion is different than someone else's. And so then we started to figure out, well, where am I? Where do I belong? So when I began, I came into the religion of Christian Science, which is where I was born into. Now, for those of you who don't know what Christian Science is, it's the belief that our minds can control everything. We can heal everything. We don't need medicines. We don't need any of that to be able to really take care of ourselves and live. And I had a grandmother. I had people who exemplified this in my life. So I've seen examples of it. My grandmother, she was a devout Christian Scientist, and I never saw her sick. I could remember one day that she was in bed with a cold, but that was about it. And I thought, how do you do that? What is it? And she explained to me, she goes, well, you might not be able to do everything, but you work up until the level of your understanding. I didn't know what that meant at that time, but I said, okay, let's see. And my life progressed where I encountered so many physical problems and ailments and all of that, and I couldn't get out of it. I didn't know what was happening. And I then started studying different things. Now, this, which was also challenging for me, because as you said in the beginning, when I began my career, I thought, what am I going to do? And there was no place for me to go. So I looked at my father. My father had been an accountant. He had done that, and he did real estate. And I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to do business. That's where I'm supposed to go. And my mother didn't do any of those things, but she did have this other sort of spiritual side to her. She kind of thought about religion, but she was really trying to mirror her mother. She was really trying to live up to what her mother's idea was. So then I'm understanding, wait a minute, we're all doing that. We've been placed into particular religions and families and this, that, and the other that start to give us our beliefs, we think. And then we start living those out. So then what happens is later on in our lives, we start to say something's different, something's going on. I came to this not because I wanted to, but because it felt like I was pushed to it, like I was forced to it. When you have moved through everything, I'm talking about everything medically that could be done for me, I said, there's got to be something else. So then I discovered books that talked about meditation. And I discovered books that talked about self-healing. There was one book in particular that talked about the anatomy of an illness, and where this guy healed himself through understanding how his emotions affected everything and deciding to be happy. I go, oh, well, that's a way to go about it. But what it told me is that we each need to find our individual ways of understanding what spirituality means to us, you see, because I thought, well, it's a religion. It's all of that, but I don't particularly believe everything in that religion. And now I'm finding other ideas that I'm coming up with. So in the 1980s, I believe it was, I discovered science of mind. And this felt very different. First of all, I love the fact that it had science in it, because that's felt more grounded to me. It felt like it was something that was real. And it gave me this ability to kind of hold on to it and see what was there. Plus, some of the teachings there explained things that seemed very logical. That seemed very logical in terms of how we might operate in our lives and what the results of that might produce. Our thoughts. Our thoughts are more important. I thought, that's pretty much what Christian Science was telling me as well. But I could not understand that because it also felt that it was just buried in this religion and dogma. And the other part of that, which was so funny, and I didn't figure this out until much later, I thought, I have not been allowed to experience my spirituality because when I was in the Christian Science religion, we were told don't change anything. You see, we were told you can't interpret things to find your own information. When we would go for everybody to understand this, when we went to services, we didn't have ministers or pastors or none of that. We had what were called readers. And the readers would read the lesson for each week. It was programmed in. This is the lesson that you have to do. And it was programmed into every single church across the world, anybody who was doing it. On this Sunday, this is the religion this is the lesson that you will deliver. And then this is just so interesting as I began to look at it. And then they started saying, wait a minute, we have men doing it, but then they started putting women in, but then the women would only take on certain roles. Then later on, they started saying, no, women can do all of the roles. You could see the progression. But where we started was being locked into some belief system that told us we couldn't understand or accept who we were, that we had to be only doing it this way, basically. And so when I discovered the science of mind, this felt very different. And I almost felt guilty for studying it. Like I shouldn't be doing this. And I know a lot of people have felt that when they decide to leave their traditional religion, sometimes that will come up because they're not understanding. And so what I had to come away with is that religions are all spirituality. They just do it in different ways. And so when I started thinking about that, I go, that feels a little bit different. It feels like I'm supposed to find something within me that is not necessarily conforming to a particular religion or dogma. Because I started thinking, wait a minute, we were born because we wanted to evolve. So that means creating something new, doing something new. But if we get locked into certain ways of being, then we're not allowed to do that. And I could see this happening in my life, which is why I struggled for so long, even in my career. So the iterations of this were, I thought, okay, I'm understanding things here. So maybe I'm supposed to be a coach. That's what I'm going to do. And so in the very beginning, I started doing life coaching. I don't know why I thought that was what I was supposed to do. I was studying the science of mind, and then I got moved to, this was in the 1980s, I discovered a course in miracles, which was another step for me. Now, this was different because I had to accept something completely new. I didn't question where science of mind came from because I knew Ernest Holmes was the guy who created this, and that all made sense to me. But then I come to A Course in Miracles, and I'm reading this stuff, and I'm just looking at it, and I go, this makes sense to me as well. But now they're saying to me that this was created through someone channeling information, someone just sitting and receiving information and writing all of this. And then they're kind of implying that this was sort of the voice of, this was the mind of Jesus that was delivering all of this. I go, no, you can't do that. You cannot say that, because we know that it's only Jesus, the only one who had this, and it's only here, and only this religion had it. So how could that be? So now I'm expanded to a whole new way of thinking. Is this possible? Because see, I had what was happening is, as I was doing the course, because I did the course was 365 lessons, a lesson a day. And I did all of them. And I could see that something was happening, that my life was changing, that I understood things in an entirely new way. but I'm doing it because I'm listening to some information that came from some being that we don't know. Some woman claims that she wrote all of this, that she received this information. And so then I said, okay, but I'm getting the results. Do I doubt this? Do I not use it because it came from something that I don't understand? Which is what spirituality is usually doing for us. It's coming from something that we don't understand. It's not tangible. So how do we hold on to that? And so that's what I was struggling with. And so when you look at my career, it shows you the struggle. Because, see, I began, like I said, in the 80s doing this life coaching thing, and I was receiving results. I didn't know why, because I thought I don't have any training. I don't have any ability. Where's that coming from? And I know now that it was intuitive, but I didn't trust that. And so I stopped. I completely stopped. I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And the person that I was working with at the time, the one client especially, was getting great results. And she was saying this, and I'm thinking, that couldn't be me. I don't know where that's coming from. So I left. So then I went into something safe, which was singing. I was a singer, so I could coach. And I had my coach told me, you need to go and coach people. So I started doing that. And I began doing it. So I spent 30 years coaching people. And as I worked with them, I began seeing certain things. I started uncovering things about them. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm learning personal development. Why am I here? How did that happen? I thought I was starting with music, you see. I thought I was only starting with singing. And then as I kept doing it more and more, I thought, no, you're supposed to do something else. And this is the part that caused me to trust a little bit more in what I was doing, which was the intuitive thing. That intuitive, I couldn't even speak those words before. I couldn't accept them because I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be burned at the stake. That's what it feels like, you know. I could never say those things. So I said, okay, I know that everyone has a life purpose because it took me so long to figure that out. Okay. And I get that. And I can see it now. And at certain points in your life, you start to accept more of what you have. And then you're willing to embrace that. You get rid of the shame and the embarrassment and all of that. And then I started to understand that so much of that was developed within me due to those early religious upbringing and dogma and things that were put into me. And especially for me, this is why I know that it has informed the work that I do now. Because not only was I in that kind of a restrictive space of this religion as I grew up, but is also different. Do you see? Nobody knew, not many people at that time knew this religion. And especially in my neighborhood where I grew up, nobody did Christian Science. They were either, the traditional thing, Baptist, Catholic, Protestant. Those were the things that existed. Christian Science was just weird. So now I've got to go to school and hang out with my friends and be this weird person who does this strange religion. And so now I'm not accepting anything about me because I want, as kids, of course, we want to fit in. We don't want to necessarily stand out. And so I'm trying to fit in, but I just couldn't. So going through that struggle, understanding that not understanding where my particular path was, eventually got me to understand that I was given the path through my struggle. See, because I couldn't figure it out, that means you're supposed to. And then when you do that, you help everyone else. And this is why I'm talking about spirituality, because I can see how it impacted my life in many different ways. When I which is why I said in the beginning, we have to think about our definition of spirituality. In the beginning, it was religion. That's what I thought it was, or tried to place it in that box. But then I started to understand, no, it's something different. It's this energy. It's this essence of who we are. It's this power. It's this thing that all of us have that we can use. And what religions have done, have taken that understanding and just fashioned it into ways that they felt it would work in their lives. And that's what we're all doing. And so now what I've come to is this place of, in my work, I'm an intuitive empowerment life purpose coach. And so I want people to understand that whatever they have, it was given to them in terms of their life conditions, where they grew up, what religions they were placed into, even what families or races or any of that was for them to use in a way that they would evolve and then help everyone else, help the world to evolve. And it's difficult for us to grab onto that and hold it if we do not have some belief in spirituality, which means that something exists beyond what we can see. That becomes my ultimate definition of what spirituality would be. This energy, this thing that we can't grab onto, but we know, we have a feeling somewhere that it exists. I wrote something this morning. This was so perfect for today. And people who will hear this will understand it. And the message was, because I meditate now and I write and I publish these things. Again, I started doing this in 1988, but it was so crazy for me to do it, to sit down and meditate and receive information and write it down like that woman I judged, who did the book. And I thought, can I do that? And so I thought, no. And so I was doing it. And it felt right to me, and it felt great, and I was receiving all this information, but I didn't want anyone to see it. You see, because we have these things built into us, this shame, this embarrassment, a fear of judgment, or whatever it is. And so I held that. But the universe or God or whatever anyone thinks of said, okay, we're not going to let you do that anymore. And so someone came into my office, and at the time when I was doing a completely different career, and they came into my office and they saw one of the writings on my desk, and they said, who wrote this? This is really good, and it's helping me. And I was like embarrassed. I'm like, this is great. I said, oh, it was me. You came through. And they said, oh, this is great. Would you please? I said, I explained, I do it every day. And they said, would you send them to me? And I said, okay. And then other people started asking. So I slowly started sending them out. And when I started seeing that, oh, wait a minute, people are receiving results. They resonate for so many people. What's going on here? And I thought, is that spirituality? Is that part that we connect with others who are on the same path, who have the same beliefs, or have the same? Is that what it is? Is that what we talk about today? The law of attraction? Is that what it is? Anyway, so I kept doing that. And then there was another step. And I'm saying this because I want everyone to understand that simply because you have not accepted every aspect of yourself at this point, that's okay. You're going to do it. And so I did this for years and years and years. And finally, I thought, I've got to write a book. I was hearing this guidance that I needed to write a book about this. And I thought, but I'm too afraid to write this book. And so I thought, well, what should I write about? Which is, everyone listening will get this one. And I said, I'm going to write about the thing that's bothering me the most, which is fear. And that's exactly what I did. I wrote a book, Overcoming Fear. And it was really a cathartic experience because in the book, I start out being completely transparent. I said, it took me forever to write this book. And the only reason I did it is because I had a friend who kept calling me every day, how much have you written? How much have you written? And I kept putting it off. And so then we finally got it done. But it was so cathartic because what I did, I had to be transparent. I had to talk about my withhold. I had to talk about my doubt and lack of belief in myself, because that's the only way that this is going to help anyone else. And so, but then what happens as a result of that, it helped me because I got out of my way a little bit more. It was freeing to do that. And so, but then there was another step yet. And I did this forever. So it's kind of funny now as I think about this. Yeah, I've never told you, I've never talked about this part of it, but this is going to be good for them. And I want the summit to have this. I need them to have this. I wrote these things I in longhand for years. From 1988, I have a drawer. I have this whole drawer filled with all these things. I did it every day from 1988 to probably 2019. That's how long I kept doing that. And then it got to the place where I'm being guided, because we all are, and everyone will feel things feel like they're being pushed and they're not doing it for some reason. I don't know. And so I could no longer keep up with the information that was coming through, and I couldn't write fast enough to get it down. And then what was happening over time, my writing got worse. I couldn't read it. I would write something, I would be in meditation, I would receive the information, write it down, and then I'd look back, I go, what is that? I couldn't read it. And then I heard, okay, you don't need this. This is another crutch you've been using to not trust yourself. Get off of that. And so then I said, okay, well, I'll start typing. I'll just go to the computer and I'll just type it. I don't need to take that extra step, you see, of writing it. I can just start typing it. I did that. And I did that for a long time, and I still do. But then they said, but there's something else. And that next step was then being willing to speak it. See, and that's where we all are now. Everybody comes to that place. Let me give myself permission to speak my voice and to allow what is me to come through. And that took forever. And the first time I did it, I would do channeling sessions, which I'm still doing. And I'm holding some now, that I'm doing. And in the beginning, because I want people to really get this, it was confronting. It was so terrifying. But it took me back to remembering what I did when I started performing. When I first go to get up on stage, I go, why am I doing this? This feels terrible. Yeah, I am so scared. I don't know why. I'm sweating and I'm nervous. Why would anyone do this? Then I came to understand that by doing it, I moved through something. I moved through some of my blockages. And so then when I started doing the channeling, the same thing happened. The very first one, I thought, okay, I'm going to be judged here. People are going to think I'm this crazy person. It's going to be weird. And I did it and I got through it. And I thought, okay, that felt great. And then the next one was completely different. The next one, I was like looking forward to it. I was like waiting for this. And I said, because this feels good. And this came out during the sessions too. I would say, okay, I'm going to do more of these because it actually feels fun for me. It actually feels good. And there's this part of us, and I get to recognize this in my clients as well, where we don't think that the thing that we're here to do on the earth could be fun, could be enjoyable, that it would please us. But that's the thing that we're supposed to find out. That's the thing that we're supposed to come and get in touch with. And it was restricted from many of us, from me especially, because of all of those things that happened and me not understanding what spirituality was. See, because when we look at religions, we don't get spirituality. We get just, rules and dogma and all of that. But when we see what's within that, this is where I had to come to for my own healing. And this was fun for me. I would start investigating different religions. I would even go to different services. I said, let me see what's going on. And people, why are you doing that? Because in each one, I would walk away with something that felt good, that felt, that it was comforting in some way. Don't know what it was. And sometimes I didn't even understand the language. But when I was a kid, I went to Catholic masses with some of my friends who were Catholic. And at that time, the masses were in Latin. And I couldn't understand. I don't think they did either. So, but it was the experience. It was being in that place. It was the ambiance of the room. It was something that brought in something within me that had nothing to do with that religion because I didn't understand it. And so now I understand, that was me awakening in my spirituality, feeling something beyond what I know.
That is amazing. Amazing story, Roger. So do you have any gifts for our viewers, our summit attendees?
Yeah, for them to have, and it's a book. It's just an ebook that I wrote, and it's called Empowerment Made Simple. And in that, I speak on just certain incidents in my life that helped form my beliefs of who I am now and why I'm doing this particular work at this point. So I'd love for them to have that.
So tell them how they can get this from you. And
it's on my website, rogerburnley.com. All the links will be there so they can get it right on my website.
Wonderful. And thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. And
Thank you.
we'll let everyone go. All right.
Great. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Rise Above Summit, October of 2021. And here I have with me in the spiritual dimension of life, Dr. Dolores Fazzino. And let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Dolores. And her story that she's going to share is amazing, and it's going to click for a lot of people. Dr. Dolores is a DNP, is a nurse practitioner, medical intuitive, Amazon best-selling author, speaker, and energy whisperer. With over 40 years in the healthcare industry, she is a distinguished pioneer bridging the world of spirituality and wellness. She helps people to realign their body, mind, and soul to heal in ways they never thought possible, creating lasting health and true wellness. So, oh my goodness, Dr. Dolores, I have so many questions for you.
Well, thank you, Patricia. It's a pleasure to be here and to be with the participants of the summit. I'm really excited to be here.
You know, and so that people get a background of how it is you came to do and have the passion for doing what you do. Can you share a little bit more about your background with the attendees?
Well, sure. You know, it wasn't by direct career development that I decided to become a healthcare provider. Believe it or not, I was a concert clarinetist and had a very pivotal moment in my life as a teenager, witnessing a miraculous healing of my father with non-traditional methods that projected me to and inspired me to change my career from music to going into healthcare.
Oh, you know, and so can you go a little bit more into that story, because that
absolutely,
it's really, I think it will touch base with a lot of people.
Well, you know what? When you're born an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person, you know, back when I was born over 60 years ago, I was kind of like one of those red herrings compared to everybody else. And I say that jokingly because I just was born that way. And my parents didn't know what to do with me. And I probably pushed all their buttons growing up and beyond. But my mom in our household, she was a product of an alcoholic household herself. So anything that had to do with feelings, she just was not having anything to do with it. And in fact, her solution for feeling anything was to ignore it, it'll go away. And when you tell that to somebody who's an empath, intuitive, and highly sensitive person, you know, as we know, when you ignore it, it doesn't go away, it actually gets bigger. So I tell my mom it's not going away, it's getting bigger. So for me, my saving grace was channeling my emotion into music. That was my creative go-to, and I really excelled at it. And actually, I'm really grateful that I had that, because when I was in second grade, the unthinkable happened in our house. My dad had to have back surgery for a ruptured disc, went into a hospital and ended up getting a hospital-acquired infection while he was there, and was actually very, very sick and on his deathbed, and was in the hospital for over 2 months. Now, at age, 7 or 8 in the 60s, we weren't allowed to go to the hospital because they didn't allow kids under the age of 12 to go visit parents or whatever. So when I saw my dad, when he came home, he was a shadow of the man that I saw, and it really scared me because I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. My mom wasn't letting us know what was happening. So my dad recovered from that, but this was 1966, 1970, whenever his immune system seemed to be compromised, he would get sick. So in 1970, he started getting these abdominal abscesses throughout his abdomen, get very, very sick, have to go to the hospital, have to have major surgery, and end up being in the hospital for over 2 months. This happened a total of 4 times between 1970 and 1975. So it was like every year and a half, when his immune system would get lowered, this would kick in. By the 4th time that this happened, my mom was at her wit's end. And at the same time, the CAT scanner was coming into its initial existence as the one first piece of modern technology to help diagnose patients. So they put my dad underneath the CAT scanner in 1975, and yes, they found that where his infections were stemming from was from where he had his surgery back in the mid-1960s. So their solution at that time was to have him undergo a spinal fusion, which in the mid-1970s was in its neophyte stages of development and came with a high risk of either being paralyzed or you die, or maybe you'll be okay. And of course, my mom was just like, I'm over this. So my mom, God bless her, in the mid-1970s, we didn't have the internet or, computers or anything, but the rag of the day where everybody got their information was the National Enquirer. I laugh about this because it's kind of funny now, but in the National Enquirer, they wrote about stories. And in this one particular issue, they shared information about this minister from Carroll, Michigan, Dr. Reverend Holmes. He's a Presbyterian minister that had the gift of laying on of hands. And he had been doing this type of work for well over 25 years by the mid-70s. And he was being written up for his ability to help his brother heal from leukemia. So my mom was all over this and thought that this was, the solution. And of course, my dad, being the big skeptic that he was, said, absolutely not unless the surgeon agrees to it. So what I'm going to tell you now was the whole setup for how all this came down. And actually the miracle that, I'm going to share with you. So my parents are in the hospital, and my mom decided after that discussion, I'm going out to talk to the surgeon. So she marches down to the nurse's station, and there's the surgeon sitting there at the desk writing his notes. And, my mom announces to the surgeon, doctor, I'm thinking about having a spiritual healer come in to help my husband with his current medical problem. And the doctor looks up without missing a beat and looks at her and says, sure, that's okay. Goes back down and continues writing. Mom goes back to my father's room and shares the good news with my dad. My dad's like, he says, okay, great, move forward. Not 10 minutes go by, my mom goes back out to the nurse's station, same doctor sitting there writing, and announces to the doctor saying, doctor, I talked to my husband. He agreed to have the spiritual healer come in to help with his condition. And the surgeon looked up at her and said, what are you talking about? I never agreed to that. Oh, yeah. So my mom decided not to share that part of the information with my father. And a month later, this was January 1976, we were at home, and I came home with my siblings. I'm one of four. My two grandmothers were there. And Reverend Holmes was there with my mom and dad. And he came out to Connecticut. That's where we lived. And he was a very interesting man, very humble, very just, you could tell he was very grounded, and just all this kindness and love radiating from him. And so he noticed that my father had one leg that was shorter than the other. We all knew this because my dad used to wear a lift in his shoe, but his shoes or slippers were nowhere in sight. My dad was barefoot. So he said to my father, Joe, please put up both your feet. And he did. And gosh, there was like a 1-inch gap when he put a book underneath the longest leg. And he said, put your legs down. And then he started praying over my father, touching his belly and touching the top of his head, quoted some things from the Bible about healing. And, not 3 minutes went by, and he instructed my father, Joe, please put up both your legs. And I kid you not, both legs were the same length. So my dad in that moment broke down and cried like a baby, like I'd never seen him cry before, ever. And because my dad needed to have a physical demonstration that something was actually happening. If he could have been from Missouri, the show me state, he would have been born there because he was the biggest skeptic ever. For me, this was a life-changing, pivotal moment for me, because I knew in that moment it was not my lifelong mission to go into music, but to go into healthcare, to help people learn about the possibility of healing in different modalities that are non-physical. I know, it gets even better. So after my dad was done with his session with the minister, he was instructed to lie down for about a half an hour or lie down for, for a day or so. He slept for more than 24 hours because when our energy field is open and energy work is being done, things are getting rerouted and realigned and, reconstructed in ways you never thought possible. And you need to sleep in order to process that. The good news is that a month later, he went back to have a repeat CAT scan. They found no evidence of the infection. In fact, he never had to have surgery for this and never had to revisit this problem ever again in his life. And he passed away at the age of 80 about 9 years ago.
Wow. I just got goosebumps.
Thank you. I know.
Really,
It's an amazing story. Yeah.
It is a beautiful thing. So that's why you ended up doing what you do, Dr. Dolores.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a ride, let me tell you.
So now, can I ask you more about, because you're in the healthcare system,
Yes.
You've been in nursing for years and working with people in surgery. So tell us more about the current healthcare system and what you bring into this arena, because I can see it being such a supplement.
Thanks, Patty. I really feel blessed to be part of the healthcare system now because, as we know, what we currently are doing is not working, and we need to do something majorly different. For me, and what I know is this: we are more than just our physical body. We are this holistic entity. There's a physical component, a mental, emotional, and spiritual component. The unfortunate part in Western medicine, we're only looking at 25% of that whole diagram, whereas the spiritual, emotional, and mental are rarely, if ever, addressed. But yet that is where the deep-seated issues that created the physical are. The physical is just the tip of the iceberg of what's really going on underneath. Yet in Western medicine, we only treat the tip of the iceberg. We don't look at the underlying issues that contributed to that. And we as human beings are so uniquely different. How we got to the physical part may be completely different from the same person, from a different person who has the same physical problem. Yet we don't look at that. So when we take a deeper dive into how we think about things, how we process our emotions, how, if we're connected to our body at all, when you are in your body, you're connected to your inner wisdom. A lot of us don't want to be in our physical bodies, and when we're in our heads all the time, because when you're in your heads, you don't have to deal with a lot of things that you have to deal with when you're in your physical body, like your emotions and your feelings. Okay, we are in a society where it's a taboo to feel, or if you have emotions, especially the negative ones, God forbid, you're not perfect. So there has to be a paradigm shift with the way that we treat patients and look at those aspects and make it okay to feel, make it okay to look at things at a deeper level, to hopefully realign things with your physical body so you could have a healing or, a better life and more wellness.
Oh, that makes so much sense, because you think of doctors and it's like, okay, well, they say your diagnosis is this. Here's a cookie cutter. Boom, boom, boom. Everybody gets the same treatment and gets put on the same meds and all that stuff, and expect
Right. And the thing is,
to be different.
Well, no, and they expect people to all heal. And the thing is, people are not. That's the problem. And that is so frustrating for the patient going in. Why am I not getting better? I'm doing everything you're telling me, but it's just like, I'm still stuck. I'm like, and they get to the point where they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they're looking elsewhere for answers and solutions.
Exactly. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. So Dr. Dolores, can you tell us more about healing in ways that we never thought possible?
When we think about healing, we think about the physical body mostly. That whole issue is gone. But you could have an emotional healing. You could have a mental healing if you're dealing with any type of negativity or an addiction or lack of self-love type of thing, or even being just disconnected from your empowerment, that power within yourself. Once you reconnect that, people are unstoppable. They create they become their own Midas. It's like whatever they touch turns to gold. And it's like you're in the flow of your life. So, people think, oh, I want to heal from this diabetes or whatever. Well, you know what? Great. You're going to get a healing. It may not be the healing you expect, but you're going to get a healing. You get what you need, not necessarily what you ask for. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my goodness, that is so true. And so now I'm thinking, and the question I'm going to ask now is kind of going back to something you said before. Tell us more about the concept of the being versus the doing, because it does tie back to what you said.
Oh, it surely does. We have been in a society for hundreds of years where you have to be, in order to be a productive member of society, you have to be doing something, proving your worth. It's constantly being in motion, trying to make something happen, forcing a boulder up a hill. That's what I call it. It's just like, it's really tiring. It's exhausting. It's a lot of stress and fatigue. And we see this in corporate America or any type of business industry where it's just like they're trying to get more out of their people. And I have the phrase, getting blood out of a turnip. It's like there's nothing more to give, yet you're expecting more. And the thing is what happens over time, that takes a toll and stress on people's health, well-being, and then they get sick. And we all know that this is not sustainable long-term, but we have the illusion that it is. And we've never been taught anything different. So when you try to step off of the doing mobile, sometimes it's very scary because you have no reference point at what it is to be not in motion. And I think we've witnessed this recently in the last couple of years with our pandemic. I mean, we came to the grand stopping, back in March of, 2020? 2020, yeah. And, everything stopped. All the doing stopped. You were actually forced into being. And people didn't know how to do that. They, it's almost like they felt like they still had to be in motion. And it was a big adjustment for people. And of course, a lot of times when you stop the doing, you're no longer distracted by being in motion. You have to, you're with yourself and you're like, oh my God, I don't like myself. It's like you freak out.
Yeah. I had said that's when it put everybody on the closest that everybody in the world has ever been to being on that same playing field.
I totally agree. Right. Yeah, they call it the grand reset. Right. But yet some people got that and they, pulled back and they started having a relationship with themselves and also learning something different. Okay, creating something different. Whereas other people, they were looking for anything to distract themselves to get out of that uncomfortable place. Yes. And I say this and, I kind of joke about it too, but it's really true. The longest relationship you're going to have with yourself or have in your life is the one you have with yourself. So the thing is like, here you have this golden opportunity to start having a relationship, but it scares the bejeepers out of people. And they're like, oh, no. So they look for things in their external, but when you look for things in your external, that's where you give your personal power away to something outside of yourself, whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously.
Oh, I agree 100%. Oh my goodness. Yes, Dr. Dolores. So can you share more about your coaching practice and the people that you serve? How have you been able to help different types of people, clients?
Well, you know what? It's really interesting because I kind of cover the whole gamut. If you look at a continuum for people who are like in extreme health crises and, cancers or, disease processes to people who are undergoing some discomfort in their life, meaning that there's something about them that they're stuck. It's like